This is not just another remake, but it's more than just funny. There are lessons to be learned from it, and it gives a different twist on that high school experience.
How do you revitalize a film 20 years later and make it relevant?
From the first moment, you're like, okay, this is different. It was a new experience and a great new telling of the story.
That reminded me of a Rocky movie. You're kind of rooting for her to get her revenge now.
There are so many characters to like for their own strangeness, and they're not like just these surface characters. Even the plastics have some sort of depth. It was definitely refreshing. It wasn't just rehashing the same thing. There was a lot to it. You love to hate her, but you also kind of love the character too.
A lot of interesting characters there. But that's kind of what high school is about.
There was a couple times where I laughed and nobody else laughed, and I'm wondering, was I the only one who picked up on that? How are you going to do this iconic character? There's lots of characters to like, even in their caricature aspects. Makes fun of and draws attention to those things, but also comes away with a decent message. You don't have to do qualifiers as to why people should or shouldn't see it. It's just like, yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hi, I'm Heath Firestone with CinemaTechnica.
And I'm Mark Loftus with Post Magazine. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about Paramount's new film, Mean Girls. Heath, you and I both got a chance to see this film before its January 12th debut. Do we want to look at some footage before we get into it?
Yeah, let's do.
My name is Regina George.
We women have to trust and support each other. You could be really hot if you change, everything. That's not Kitty.
Are you trying to make the rest of us feel dumb?
I'm not trying to. It's just happening.
Dear God, woman.
I could talk to him for you if you want. You would do that for me? Trust me. We're gonna make her pay.
All we've done is make Regina hotter and revive the wet look.
Get in, loser.
So this film was inspired by and is kind of based on the 2004 film of the same name, Mean Girls. It had a huge following from that original release, and it had, stars in it like Rachel McAdams and Lindsay Lohan and Amanda Seyfried, and it was hugely popular. This film, it's different in the sense that it's a musical, but it's a musical that was inspired by a Broadway musical of the same name also. So they're all kind of tied together. And Tina Fey was involved in the original film and obviously this film as well. I remember seeing the original film vaguely. It's not something that necessarily stuck with me, and I was a super fan of it. I appreciated it, but I didn't really remember it a whole lot other than the people that were in it. Heath, you've seen it more recently and I guess have that much more familiarity with it.
Yeah, so I also wasn't a huge fan, but I did enjoy it, and I do remember it. And a couple years ago, my wife and I watched it again, and yeah, I enjoyed it as much the second time, maybe even more than the first time. And so I was curious, when they're remaking it, because we see so many remakes, but this is the 20th anniversary for this, so it's not just another remake because they think that they can, milk some more money out of it. This actually has a pretty big following, kind of a cult following. In fact, when I was researching this, I found out that there's actually Mean Girls Day, which is October 3rd, which is reference to a line in the movie where she's, I think, journaling, and she says something like, today is a great day. It's October 3rd, but it's a great day because it's the first time he asked me, what day is it? And I said, it's October 3rd. And so anyway, it's just funny, to find out these little things that the mega fans and stuff have created a day for it. We have that for stuff like Star Wars, but, I had no idea there was a Mean Girls Day, but I guess people wear pink on that day and get together and, I don't know, talk about their favorite quotes or something. But, so it really does have a following. And I see why, because to me, it is a fairly timeless film. It's still funny, still relevant, but it's more than just funny. There are lessons, to be learned from it, and it kind of gives a different twist on, that high school experience, which everybody probably had some bad experiences in high school, and so it kind of, I don't know. I like it because it kind of makes fun of and draws attention to those things, but also comes away with a decent message. So I don't know.
You bring up a good point of how do you kind of revitalize a film 20 years later and make it relevant? And I think one of the biggest and more obvious instances in this case is the use of social media and the presence of social media. So 20 years ago, not so much, but this version, social media is everywhere. They're shooting with their phones. They're capturing all the performances. The mom is there with the selfie stick at the performance, getting in there too, so that she can be a part of it. It's being shared messages are being shared across, the entire school as quick as they happen. Rumors get started and stuff like that. So it's very timely with what's going on with social media. And they brought that into the film in a couple of different ways. And one of them was using the TikTok aspect ratio there too, which,
Right.
people that use that platform will be very familiar with the horizontal or vertical format versus the horizontal that you typically see in a theatrical experience.
Right. Well, and that was the other thing. It's like whenever there's a remake, you're like, well, especially when it's a classic, like how are they really going to do this? How are they going to make it fresh and that sort of thing? But like you said, they have a Broadway play that's based on this. So they have a bunch of music that a lot of people haven't seen. And so it's a good way of exposing people to that too. And from the first moment when they start the film, you're like, okay, this is different. It's going to be the same story, but it's going to have enough fresh approaches to it and everything else that, to me, it was a new experience and a great new telling of the story, but definitely in a musical format, was definitely refreshing. It wasn't just rehashing the same thing. There was a lot to it, So, Mark, I know you got a chance to talk to some of the people behind the scenes, the directors and some other people, and did a lot of research on how a lot of this movie was actually made. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I found out that the budget for this was $36 million, and I think they're anticipating it doing very well on opening weekend, almost making that much back, maybe $30 million. So we'll have to see when the box office numbers come out. But I did get to speak with the directors. There was a directing duo that worked on it, Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr. I got to speak with both of them, and they both have a little bit of a different background, but they come together as a partnership on a film like this for different reasons. One, Samantha has a comedy writing background, and Arturo has a music video background. So this is a very well suited project for them, with it being both comedy and music driven. I talked to them. They said the film was initially going to be shot over 34 days. It actually went to be 39 days. Much of it was shot on location at a former prep school near Red Bank, New Jersey, and then some of the houses and stuff. And you don't really think of this as a visual effects film so much, but there were a couple of clever visual effects in it. I don't know if you picked up on any of them watching it in some of those long camera things, but what were your initial thoughts on the production, Heath?
So it had a lot of music videos in them. As like you said, you could tell that it was cut together like a bunch of music videos. Like you said, 12 different music videos.
Yeah, I think that's the equivalent of 12 music videos would have come out.
And each of them was treated basically as a music video. And so they had that production value, but several one-shots. So where Steadicam operator goes in and out and through and all around, and everything has to be choreographed just right. And they did an excellent job of that and just tied it together. I also really like the transitions from scene to scene. Like you and I talked before about the garage scene where they actually open up the garage and they go into the African savannah, which you want to tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, that's an interesting story there. I assumed, having seen the film, that when the garage door opens, they're just going to a blue screen and cutting to like some kind of safari type footage. But the reality is that garage was a set that they built and brought to a landfill in New Jersey. And when the garage door opens and you see those weeds and everything growing, that's really live action land that you're seeing there, a landscape there. It's not Africa, it's New Jersey. Now, when you see the animals and stuff populating it, the giraffe, those are visual effects that are put in after the fact by some of the visual effects studios. But yeah, that was a practical transition there. They do use a couple of interesting transitions throughout the film. A lot of it is shot anamorphic, and that's the footage that is grounded in reality when they're in the classroom and, talking amongst the students and stuff like that. But then they go into these hyper stylized music video sections with, the lighting and the effects and stuff. And that's represented cinemorphic, so it's got the black bars on the top and bottom, and it changes. It goes back and forth. I don't know if the viewer necessarily is aware of it, but if you pay close attention to it, you will see it going back and forth between the widescreen with the bars and back to the anamorphic full screen on it.
If you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe and check out CinemaTechnica.com.
And check out postmagazine.com, where you can learn more about the production and post-production for Mean Girls.
thought it was really creative how they switched between the different formats and that sort of thing throughout. And there were some really great transitions as well, especially when you're coming from, like I said, when we went from the African savannah and then into the tent, and then we transfer out of the tent. She opens up the tent things, and then suddenly she's in the schoolyard. And once again, just these great transitions between there, really seamlessly. I don't know. I really appreciated how they transitioned from one scene to the next. But you had some more details on because there's a lot of Steadicam work there. But go ahead and tell us about that.
There is a lot of Steadicam, and if you're watching it, you'll notice that a lot of these shots are uninterrupted. Like you said, there's a tremendous amount of choreography that goes on to make sure that the camera is not in the way of the performers. The performers are not, impeded by it or anything. It turns out that Arturo Perez Jr., one of the directors, he had worked with the Steadicam operator Arri Robbins in the past on a Justin Timberlake music video. It was the music video Say Something with Chris Stapleton. And that music video was a one long shot music video also, where Justin Timberlake's playing guitar, he gets in an elevator, he goes up, he gets off at another floor, he moves around, interacts with Stapleton and stuff. So he has a history working with the cinematographer, Steadicam operator in that case, doing a one-shot type of music video. So the fact that they were able to pull it off there, he has a history doing these things, and it really shows that they do it. They pointed to one of the musical sequence. It was called Karen Sexy. I guess it was the second time. And hers was one long shot also, uninterrupted. And you wonder, are they going to be able to get away with this and do it? Or are they going to have to use some kind of seaming to make the cuts come together? But no, they said it was a single one long shot. So credit to the Steadicam operator in that case.
Yeah, it was impressive. When you had told me that they had these really long shots, I was wondering, are they hiding some of the transitions? So I was watching pretty carefully. I mean, and I was like, man, no, I was thinking it looks like one shot. I don't see anywhere where they could have easily hidden a cut. And I was really impressed because, you have to have everything has to be working just perfect. All the choreography, the cameraman has to get his shots just right. Everything has to go just right. And
absolutely. And you look at these scenes, there
impressive.
Are dozens and dozens of kids in these scenes. So there's a lot of room for things to go wrong. And you're right. I was looking to see if they were hiding any of those transitions. And the way they'll do that is they'll follow somebody across the screen, or they'll come to a pole or something, and they'll use that as a transition. But no, I didn't see any of that. And they said that, we did it in one take, and they were shooting one of these music videos essentially each day during that 39 day shoot that they did for the production. So real credit to getting that synchronized and working as well as it did.
Yeah, no, I was impressed. I was really impressed with the camera work. And, as an effects guy and a camera operator, and having done a lot of effects stuff, I realize how complex this type of stuff is. And just really impressed with the quality of it. And it totally fed this story. It really worked. It kept it moving along and just kept a lot of the creativity there. I mean, the whole story was well executed. And this is just one of those pieces that really made it really polished, I think,
Yeah, I want to bring a little attention to Bill Kirstein, who is the director of photography. He was using an Arri Alexa 35, which is a digital camera. I think it has a 4.6 K sensor in it. So he's capturing it digitally, but they wanted to make it look like it was a film, filmic looking. And they worked with the team over at Harbor Picture Company in New York. And according to the colorist over there, Damien, he obviously wanted, the directors wanted the film to look as rich and filmic as possible while maintaining the realism. He used a film light baselight system on it to give it that effect. And he used one effect called halation, and that gives you a little bit of a halo glow in a couple of different scenes that you can control. So just interesting how that was added in post-production to give it this really polished, saturated, colorful look that you would expect from a film like this.
Well, and we've seen, several films recently where they've been playing with different things being in black and white, and, with Poor Things, we had these different weird lenses that were used and stuff. In this case, they played a lot more with changing aspect ratios, like you said, from the vertical to even like one scene, which I think is put in the short that we had. In different segments on the screen, and just like they really had a lot of fun changing between those aspect ratios like you talked about. And yeah, it's like all of it really added a level to the creativity and I don't know, watchability.
I think
of this film,
that vertical format is very acceptable these days because of platforms like TikTok, where everybody is just so familiar with it. They're so familiar with the phone being in that, aspect ratio that it's not jarring as it may have been in years past when you weren't expecting it. So they definitely took advantage of it in a number of sequences in this film.
Well, and if I recall right, I think they also did cool transitions between them, so it just worked. I really liked that it was not it was not like Poor Things where you really get thrown off by those things. This was a very organic transition between these things. It worked really well. I think.
It was seamless. You don't even notice it when they go out the back of that the garage into the savannah there. It goes from the vertical narrow to widescreen. They transition right there. You don't even realize it. And then the music video sequences where they add the black bars and kind of like change the shape. Again, it's very subtle, but if you're paying attention, you kind of do realize those things. And it's fun. It's a fun aspect of filmmaking that kind of represents the different themes or feelings that they were trying to give. So Heath, when you look at the poster, Renee Rapp, she's kind of front and center. She plays Regina George, but I think Katie Angourie Rice's character, I don't know if she's considered the star or the lead in it. I'm curious as to who you saw as the star of this film, because I really feel that Renee Rapp, Regina George, kind of stole the show a little bit there. And as much as you're not supposed to like her, I kind of did find myself liking her a little bit. I don't know if I'm the odd man out in this case, but what are your thoughts on how the screen time was divvied up between the different characters there?
You're absolutely right. Definitely Katie is the traditional hero in this story. But there's arcs for other characters as well. And I was actually kind of thinking the same thing. I'm like, there's an aspect of Regina George where she fills in that role too. And I think there was some of that even in the original movie, but it seemed like it was more so in this. But I don't know. But it seemed like to me anyway. And so, yes, she's definitely bad and evil and stuff, but she does have an arc too, and there are times where you're kind of rooting for her after she gets humiliated and stuff. And I don't know, each of the characters got at least one song where they got to be the star of that song and kind of get to learn a little bit more about who that character really is. Regina George got multiple, and so she's definitely maybe an anti-hero that you're kind of also rooting for. You love to hate her, but you also kind of love the character too in a weird way. I don't know. I really like you look at the character.
Yeah, you look at the story. Okay, this good girl is kind of beat down by these bullies in high school, and she ultimately gets her revenge. But that leads to what I thought was one of my favorite scenes in the film. They without getting too much into spoilers, they kind of, Katie has her revenge on Regina without Regina even knowing that it's being done to her. And when Regina ultimately realizes that she has been kind of taken advantage of here, she starts planning her revenge. And you see her on the treadmill and you see her kind of brooding. And that reminded me of a Rocky movie. I thought of Rocky 3. And here's why. Because the girls were all out partying and enjoying themselves and stuff and having a great time at, Regina's expense. Haha, we pulled one over on her. And Regina is back at home and she's kind of brooding and she's on the treadmill and she's planning her revenge. And it reminded me of Rocky in the sense that Apollo and Rocky are out and they're celebrating, they're doing great. And Clubber Lang is in this sweaty gym and he's coming after the title. And I thought there was a parallel there. I don't know if it was intentional, if maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I saw something there and that was like, you're kind of rooting for her to get her revenge now. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Well, the other thing is, especially in the second half of the film and the third act in particular, Regina George becomes a lot more interesting, I think. She when after she gets hit by the bus, she's in a big neck brace thing where in the old movie she was I don't know, one of those things that isolated your head or whatever,
right,
but
the halo. Yeah,
there were so many laughs that you got from it. There was some of course she was on medication at this point, but man, her character became really pretty likable and very funny. And I don't know, I got a lot of laughs out of this film in general.
So Heath, beyond Katie and Regina, who are obviously like the stars of the film, there are a lot of interesting characters there, a lot of laughs. I think of Damien. I think of like some of the laughs that he brought from it. And then, Aaron, he's kind of just, he's there. He's there. You know what I mean? He's kind of being fought over by these girls. He doesn't really necessarily add a lot to it other than, a object of their affection. But the friends, Janice, like I said, Damien, Regina's friends, Gretchen and Karen. Karen had her own song. Janice had her own song. And you really learn a little bit about them, and you kind of become, fans of theirs as well because of that. So there's really a lot of screen time being broken up amongst a lot of interesting characters there. But that's kind of what high school is about. It is a lot of interesting characters. So what are your thoughts?
Well, and I think maybe that's what some of the appeal of even the original film, but also definitely this one too, is that there are so many characters to like for their own strangeness, their own unique whatever it is, and just because and they're not like just these surface characters where it's like, oh, she's the stupid girl. She's stupid, but she's actually really funny in her own way, and there's there's something driving each of these things. And so even the plastics have some sort of depth. I mean, that's probably a weird thing to say, but they do in a way. And you see that with some of the things, but I don't know, but there's lots of laughs and there's lots of characters to like, even in their caricature aspects. I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well, but there's a lot of characters to like, and I don't know.
Yeah, even the mathletes, the guys that
Yes.
were the mathletes, I thought they were funny. So the jocks, they portrayed them a certain way, the musicians and the band people and stuff. It was just a lot of stereotypes there, but all in a funny way, I think.
Yeah. Like I said, this movie, there was a lot to like, a lot of people like, and I was kind of curious though, how well some of these characters are going to be able to be played by a different actor, especially, honestly, both Regina and Katie are going to be tricky ones to do, but all of them really are kind of iconic, and so you're like, how are they going to do it? But they were different enough from the originals, but, had enough of the same elements that you accepted them as this character while recognizing that it's not the same exact character from the prior movie, and it worked. It's like you're always wondering, how are you going to do this iconic character? But I think they actually did a good job of pulling it off, all of them, really.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So, Mark, what are your final thoughts on this film?
I was pleasantly surprised by this film. It's not, I don't typically seek out musicals to go check out, but I was curious about this one. I love stylized films. I love when they really do the saturated colors and everything. Again, I saw the press screening probably the week before the film came out, and it was a well-attended press screening, and you could tell that the people in attendance a lot of them were fans of the franchise, and they laughed and they applauded it different times, without spoiling it. So I think the film is going to do well at the box office. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. How about yourself, Heath? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was actually really looking forward to this film because I did enjoy the first one, and though I'm not a mega fan, I'd probably only seen it twice before this. I was really looking forward to it, and I liked the idea because I knew it had been turned into a musical, and I'm like, yeah, this would be cool to see it that way. It'd be cool to see what refreshing take they have. There were a lot of laughs in it. I really enjoyed it. I was expecting to enjoy it, and I also enjoyed it. There was definitely a lot of jokes meant for people who had seen the previous films, but a lot of them are funny, I think, even if you haven't seen it. There was a couple times where I laughed and nobody else laughed, and I'm wondering, was I the only one who picked up on that?
I had that happen to me once or twice too, where I laughed before everybody else, and I don't know if maybe I wasn't supposed to or not.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, there was things that were, I guess I found some things funny that other people didn't necessarily catch or didn't find funny, but I think I just probably was the one who caught them. But yeah, there was a lot of those laughs. I really enjoyed the entire thing. Came out of the film, feeling really happy with that performance and everything. It was a good film.
I think so. I think you come out of it, it's a feel-good film. It was fun. There were laughs. The music was good. The performances were good. The camera work and everything was interesting. It was a fun film. No qualms here.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you don't have to do qualifiers as to why people should or shouldn't see it. It's just like, yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good point. Well, Heath, I want to thank you again for having me on CinemaTechnica's podcast and discussing this film. It was a fun one.
Thanks, Mark. I always enjoy talking to you about stuff like this, so thanks for coming on.